Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop Fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Between the Lines is over. All the news behind the news. And some hippie smut.
Hey, you really gonna quit the main line?
Why stick around?
Okay, why does anybody get up in the morning? You don't.
I don't.
I think we should get rid of him.
That's insane. The whole office is going to get up and walk out.
Roy Walsh buys this paper, I'm walking.
Me too. Me too.
Me too.
Well, that's that. We had some good times here, didn't we? We really shook things up.
Everybody in the unemployment line.
I had you going there for a second, didn't I?
Between the lines, Andy, between the lines. You could argue that this is the most journalisty of the journalist movies we've talked about, just based on the numbers of people who call themselves journalists in this movie. Whether or not we see them doing any active journalism.
Yeah, if it's a count-based thing, then certainly. If anything, I feel like Boat People, our first one, is likely the one that is most journalistic. I mean, I guess The Weight of Water is to that extent also, because I mean she's actively researching a story.
Yeah, I know.
And this one you don't. I mean, there is some, but there's so much of this that just because it's a very much an ensemble piece looking at the life of people who work at this place, and so you're getting some stories about stories, some stories about life in the office, and some stories about life outside the office.
Yeah, right. Which is fine, because that's not what the movie is about, right? The movie it ends up being about not the actual sort of shoe leather journalism that we may aspire to, but it's about the chaos of these people living and working together. It's about youth catching up with everyone, or the real world catching up with everyone, eventually, the ticking clock that is life. And that's okay. It just so happens to be set in this alt newspaper, and I find it. Well, what do you think I thought of this movie? I've already spoiled that.
Well, you told us last week that you
did.
loved it, so I would pretty much know. What do you think? Do you think I
think you didn't like it as much as I did. I think
interesting.
Yeah, I think you didn't. I think you.
Okay.
I think there were things about it that turned you off.
Well, this movie was rated R. When it was released here in the United States. There's some sex and nudity, strip club stuff. That's mostly what it is. I mean, there's the usual other things, profanity, alcohol, drugs, smoking, stuff like that. But hey, do you want to watch this movie and help us out? Well, if you see an Apple or an Amazon link to the movie in our show notes, just click on it. It will take you right to the site. You can rent or buy the movie. When you do this, we get a little tiny piece in return. Win-win.
And you should check out our merch store. I tried this weekend to do a little bit of work on the merch and get a couple of new art pieces up there, but Adobe was foiling me. Adobe really messed with me. So I'm working on it, but I'm thinking this week. I think this is the very week that we'll have some new goodies for our last series up in the store. I don't know what this one's going to be.
I think it just needs to be the paper.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, we're going to advertise the paper. That'll be great. TrueStory.fm/TNR merch. You can actually sport the newspaper logo. Maybe it'll have the word smut on it. Hippie smut.
Hippie smut. your home for your favorite hippie smut.
And this will be right on the heels of our trip to Smutty Nose. Welcome to Smutty Nose.
That's true. Wow. So funny. Hey, we are featuring audio reviews from you. If you've seen the movie, email us your 30-second audio review to reviews@truestory.fm. As soon as you watch the movie, we just might end up showcasing your voice on the show. You got to get them in quick, though. We record about 2 weeks in advance, so make sure you are tracking our upcoming shows so that you can watch them ahead and get those reviews sent in. Again, send them to reviews@truestory.fm.
Andy, how would I ever possibly know what the upcoming shows are? You guys are a complete mystery over at The Next Reel. How would we ever know what movies are coming around the corner? To which you would say, don't worry, Pete. If you're wondering where you can see what movies we're talking about in the coming weeks, for the rest of the entire season, you can see the entire series rundown on our Letterboxd HQ page. While you're there, sign up for a pro or patron membership with the discount code NEXTREEL, or just visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd. That's LETTERBOXD, and you'll get 20% off. That works for renewals as well.
And also, you can tune in to us when we're actually recording the shows by checking our live stream calendar, which is available. Why don't you tell people where it's available, Pete?
If you visit truestory.fm/TNR live, I've embedded the Google Calendar there, and so it does not yet have all of the specific names of the movies, but we're working on that. So by the time you get this, we'll have gone in and updated the actual movies we're recording on those days.
If you do want to support the show, we would love it if you would sign up to become a member. Just head over to our site, and you can sign up to become a member either a month to month or at the annual rate, and you get all sorts of goodies. Early access to every episode. That's one of the things you get.
They do. Members get early access to every episode, and they also get so many bonus episodes. I think we're getting better at our retake episodes. What is a retake episode? That's such a great question. A retake episode is an episode that we do just for members only, where we Andy and I talk through all of the movies we've talked about in a given series and just to kind of distill some lessons learned. What have we learned about the filmmaker, the performances, the direction, the cinematography across all the movies of a given series? How do they connect? How do they really not connect? Should the journalist series have actually had more journalists in it? It's all great questions, and we'll be covering that on the retake for this series.
We also have our monthly member bonus episodes that fill in a gap from one of our series. Our January one recently came out. It was Mr. Blanding's Builds His Dream House, which filled in a gap in our black and white cinematography of James Wong Howe series, as well as our Cary Grant series. What is our February member bonus going to be? You'll only find out and get to vote on it if you are a member.
The other thing we've got is this monthly Flick Chart re-ranking episode where we shake up our Flick Chart list, and mostly we just try to get Prince movies up higher and keep 2001 right where it is. That's the entire initiative. Every other movie we get through is just biding time to get to those matchups. And so we do that once a month, and it's super fun.
Just head to truestory.fm/TNR membership, where you can learn more about the different tiers. The most it'll cost you is $5 per month or $55 per year.
Between the Lines, Andy, I love this movie. I had just a blast with it. I love the cast. I love this kind of movie. I love the setting. I love the conflict. And I think I love the conflict because I feel like my time in a newsroom was met with so many of these sort of capitalist conflicts too. Like the initiative, the reason you go into journalism is not so that you can aspire to be a participant in a corporate takeover, right? That's not why people join J-school programs. Normally they don't want to be on that side of the table. Those are people who go into advertising and marketing. And so this movie, I think, was really fun for me because, I remember those meetings with advertisers who come in and said, if we sponsor your show, we want to be able to talk about the things we want to talk about. And we want you on your news broadcast to talk about things the way we want you to talk about them. And, as a way for money to influence the media. And I've been in those meetings, and they're uncomfortable. They're difficult. And this movie, to me, is a showcase of just how long that conflict has been going on between the private sector and the media, and the fact that they're able to sort of have those kinds of conversations in this movie and do it in a way that's funny and with people that I genuinely like throughout the entire thing. Just really, they had me from jump. Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it.
Oh, what a relief.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. It's such a great idea, especially for this type of paper, which is kind of, I think every area has one of this type of paper where it's kind of like that alt news. It's people who are wanting to dig a little deeper and aren't trusting the man, and the people who work at this paper are the people who were the hippies out in the 60s, and they really wanted to kind of create this space where they could kind of get this stuff out there. And so, yeah, they were working at this paper that, John Hurt's character was there from the beginning, and, had kind of like, they built this thing up to kind of be a place where they could kind of get these stories out. And there's plenty of slacking going on with, with them, but the whole idea is they came from a place of the 60s, and now here they are in the 70s. And yeah, there's these corporate takeovers of these papers that are disappearing, and that personality of what they stand for is getting sucked into this corporate machine that wants to, quote, continue what it stands for, but really are just there as another form of making more money. And so you've got to toe the line. And watching kind of, the way that the film plays out, especially as we get into the end, as the corporate takeover happens. I think it's really telling, and it kind of paints an interesting picture that, like you said, is still going on with any of these sorts of things that, people create and get out there, and it becomes popular. And so what happens? the people who are owning it want to sell it to make money off of it, and it turns into a corporate thing, and then all of a sudden the whole point of it kind of collapses.
And I think depending on who you ask today, that the war has been won, right? There are fewer and fewer, I think, news organizations that are fighting this battle healthily, right? Especially when you talk about local news and hyper-local news.
So would you say the war has been won or the war has been lost?
Well, it's already, for me, the war has been lost, for sure.
I was going to say.
The war has absolutely been lost. We lost the war, and, we didn't, but it's interesting that we didn't lose it the way we thought we were going to lose it, right? I think, and this movie would be an interesting and nay, impossible remake because, so many of the factors at work in this movie are tiny drops in the ideological bucket once you bring, social media, Facebook, news organization into bear and the attention-seeking bit. You don't have street hawkers, on the street anymore, selling papers into your
selling papers and
window,
and hooking up.
Yeah, John Corks is fantastic, and so I think that. This, as much as this is a hard story from the perspective of someone who was in media early on, it's also charming in the things that are important to it. It's also, I think we need to talk about John Hurd because this is also the crossover episode for our John Hurd series, and I don't know that I would call him a protagonist of this movie. It's definitely an ensemble piece, but he's the one with the worldview that I'm following the hardest, right? Because, he's the one who was the great sort of beat reporter. He had written the award-winning exposés, and now he's really struggling with where he fits as the world changes around him. The New York Times, original New York Times review had this great line, and I think it's reflective of Hurd's place in the film. This is a movie about growing up after you've grown up, right? Because they're all ostensibly adults, but they still don't know how to adult. And he's really struggling with that, and he becomes the sort of bellwether for what is going on in in this newspaper and really the soul of the place as people at the top start changing. And he was also, I think, terrific.
I completely agree. One quick note to clear something up: it is absolutely 100% Michael J. Pollard playing the hawker, not John Corks. Michael J. Pollard.
You're right.
Is
Michael
so,
J. Pollard.
I love him so much in absolutely everything. He's just such a face that I will always cherish in film because he's so great. But John Hurd is the heart and soul of the film. He is the protagonist, 100%. Without a doubt, he is the character who, despite the fact that we're following so many stories over the course of this, the relationships, the drama within the workplace, the story dramas, whatever it is, there's all these different dramas going on, but it is John Hurd's story as Harry, both in the paper and in the relationship, that is the one that kind of is largely the crux of the story, especially as we get to the end and see that final conflict between him and the corporate head coming in to take over everything. I don't know. I loved him in the film. I found him to be such a great kind of face for the paper and just kind of like the one who is kind of like heading things up. And I just like, I don't know, he worked really well as this guy who had been around from the beginning, as he said at one point, when he was kind of showing that picture and I don't know, he felt like somebody who, I don't know, there's an interesting element with him where like the point we come into the story with him, it also feels a little bit like the paper and like these people from the 60s now in the late 70s, kind of like figuring out his place, like you said, trying to figure out how to grow up still.
Absolutely. And it is like he gets the punchline, even though everybody is kind of spreads out and does their own thing. Like he's the one we follow to the end. And I just think he's fantastic.
His little dream sequence or fantasy that he has when he runs into Roy's office with the gun and then just like the little suction cup sticks to his forehead. That was just great.
That was right. I thought, there's no way this movie's not going to do that. There's no way this movie's going to. He's got a gun. He's going in. I didn't see that. Oh, got it. On brand. I thought that was absolutely on brand. But that's not to say that this movie isn't filled with fantastic people. I mean, I think between sort of Jill Eikenberry and Gwen Wells and Lindsay Krause as the Abby, his photographer and paramour. I think we also get a great sense of just sort of the inherent at the time diversity in the newsroom, and I thought that was great. Although I think you can see this movie as a representation of just how far newsrooms had to go. You didn't have an equivalent John Hurd on the news staff that was a woman showcased in this movie. I think and that was, I think, representative of the time.
Well, nor did you have a Joe Morton anywhere except the advertising
really
department.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Joe Morton's got pipes too.
Oh, that's what I wrote down. I'm like, wow, Joe Morton can sing.
I know. There was a great little bit in the nightclub as things were, slowing down at the end of the night, where Goldblum gets on the keyboard, and we know that Goldblum, is an exceptional piano player. And it was Stephen Collins picks up the bass, and Joe Morton picks up the mic, and they actually jam for just a few bars, and it's great.
Yeah.
Great. Really fun.
What also was a surprise was like Mary Lou Henner. I was like, oh, wow,
yeah.
she's sure is dancing and stripping.
Mary Lou Henner is the stripper. That was another one I had to, well, this sounds bad. I had to back it up. Because I saw it was before they were interviewing her, right? You could see her dancing, and I was like, "Is Mary Lou Henner a bit player in this? Is she even credited?" And then she actually has a part in the movie, like she's actually interviewed, and I thought she was great.
No, it was a fun character to kind of throw in there as like this a character who is the sort of interview that you can see them interviewing, like we're going to interview a dancer at a strip club and talk to her about kind of like the real questions and stuff. But I love the way also that played out, because it was an interesting conflict between her and John Hurd, who was the quote reporter doing the interview, and Lindsay Krause, who was the quote photographer taking photos, but was asking much more interesting questions than Harry was. And I was like, gosh, it was I don't know, the dynamics of that, like it was like, there was something interesting there that I think was starting to reflect how Harry was kind of in this place where he wasn't, like, he was becoming kind of a sloppy journalist, right? Like, he was not asking the good questions, and he was already prejudging his subject. And I thought that was actually kind of interesting.
And the fact that we get to, I think the way he plays falling apart intellectually is really great. Like, how many times have you been in that space where you're doing something that professionally you should be able to do? You've done it before. You have the, deep down, you have the chops to do this thing, but you care so little that you just can't muster the energy that it takes to do this thing. And that's what I felt like I was looking at with John Hurd's performance here, was this guy who we know is an award-winning or was an award-winning reporter. And he just can't figure out how to turn on the professional stuff because he's so distracted by the fact that he's falling apart and doesn't care. And I thought that was really special.
And it really ties into the story, right? And kind of the place for these people. And perhaps maybe that's part of the reason why this corporate takeover is happening. It's like, this is 10-ish years from the time that it's been founded. Maybe they're floundering, and he's representing that place where they're not quite able to kind of keep up with the times and figure things out. And it makes room for that, for Roy and his corporate takeover to happen.
Well, it certainly does. And I think there are two things going on there. The first is just, we've talked about sort of the capitalist takeover and authority, right? Where is ideological authority in the newsroom? Is it in the hands of the reporters and editors, or is it in the hands of the publisher? And the one who has to dance between the two worlds of profit and performance? And is it this collision of relationships and purpose? And that, I think, is what Lindsay Krause and John Hurd are doing in this movie. Is Lindsay Krause still very much loves what she's doing in her world, and she's not ready to make any change like Hurd is, like Harry is, right? She's just in such a different place in her career that it redefines what she wants to do and what boundaries in their relationship she's willing to push against, and that creates a discontinuity between the two of them that I think they capture really well on screen. It makes their relationship interesting, and I don't think we can talk about this movie without talking about how those relationships are influenced by the spaces in which they live. I love that they are shooting all of this movie in apartments and buildings that appear to be real to where these people would have lived in the city. And they are tiny and horrible and fantastic. And I think they use the space to boil over performances when appropriate. That I think is really special. I thought it just looked so authentic to the piece and to the period.
I also recently just watched Tick, Tick, Boom. And there was an element where, he's living in that film in this really tiny apartment where his shower and bathtub is like in the kitchen, the back of the kitchen. And it's just like, there's this place where you're living in certain big cities in the country where pricing was just, not friendly to people. And for these people who their motivation wasn't necessarily money, it was the journalistic integrity and not working 9 to 5 and being out there constantly ready to kind of get the story and stuff and being hungry and all that. And that means that you're not necessarily going to have the greatest places. And so, when you see John Hurd's little tiny place and, he's got that little bedroom with kind of the French doors and everything, it all feels just so compressed. And I think that worked very well.
Bruno Kirby is David Entwistle. He is the young reporter and young writer getting his start. And also just love that. I know that there is, it just feels to me like there could be a universe in which Bruno Kirby started at this paper and then moved to New York and it becomes the protagonist in When Harry Met Sally, if it were just for a butterfly flapping its wings in Tokyo. You know what I mean? I thought it was great.
So funny. And that was one of the things that, I really enjoy about this type of ensemble film, where you do have these different stories of people that you're kind of tracking across this place. And yeah, I thought it worked well, especially opposite like both John Hurd's character Harry and Jeff Goldblum's character Max, having this character that Bruno Kirby was playing, David, as this young new reporter who really was just completely trying to figure this out. And all of the stuff at the beginning as he's like trying to get these interviews and the way that he's talking and everything, I don't know, it was very fun to kind of watch him try to figure out what he was doing. I had a great time with him, and it building to the end where he is like the guy who's been around. I don't want to say the longest. I don't know how many people might have left, but he's the one who's giving advice now to some other new kid who's coming up. It was fun to see.
Which was great, just great, because he also had to learn how to give advice, right? And you could see he's like everywhere we see him, he's learning something, right? He's learning how to talk to people in some kind of new way. He's just sort of clumsy, which was great. I want to talk a little bit about how the thing is shot and cut together, because I think it's given the complexities of a big ensemble cast like this. I think, Joan Micklin Silver, our director, did a fantastic job of telling all of these stories in a way that felt lifelike to me. And the scene that I think is the strongest representation of that is the actual dance club scene. The way she uses cutting to move between these discrete conversations around the club as people are dancing. Some of them someone's trying to come on to somebody else. We have Hurd and Lindsay Krause, or Harry and Abby are fighting, and we've got. But we have probably and we have the Entwistle is trying to get into a conversation between potential new owner he's heard about. We've got everybody's having. I mean, there's probably five or six different
Michael and Laura
conversations.
fight too.
Yeah. Michael and Laura are fighting too. We've got 5 or 6 conversations
and
going
Max,
on here.
we got to say, Jeff Goldblum had some of the best hip dancing I've seen.
Yes.
Let's just say.
Yes.
That was some fine
fantastic. In that
sway
red jacket, that red sateen jacket was amazing. And I never once felt like I was losing the thread of any one of them. Right. I think it was an incredibly efficient way to move all of these stories forward in one location that I'm sure was a nightmare to shoot, but was so well used in this. It didn't feel clumsy. It didn't feel, overplayed. It felt just very much like we're moving everybody's story forward here in a way that feels organic and human.
It really did, and that is something I have heard people talking about Joan Micklin Silver. I'm coming late to the game with her as a filmmaker. And sadly, I mean, we just lost her in 2020. But those sort of projects that she had been working on, I feel like there's a lot of really interesting stuff out there that she had done. She's definitely somebody who has a kind of a feel. Like, I loved the feel of this world she created, and we're going to be the next film we're going to be talking about is another of her films. As we should mention, this is a journalist series. The end of our journalist series, but it's also the beginning of our John Hurd series. And the next film we're going to be talking about is another film that she did with John Hurd called Chilly Scenes of Winter. And so it'll be nice to kind of have 2 Joan Micklin Silver films together so we can really kind of compare what she's doing in her storytelling style. Because, just out of the gate with this, the way that she crafted it, like, I was constantly engaged with these characters and with the world and just the shifting. It always worked for me. I found it quite mesmerizing.
Yeah, I think so too. It was interesting to hear Ray talking about how he said, they had used their earnings from her first film, Hester Street, 1975, historical romantic drama. He said, but by 1978, when we were distributing between the lines, it was difficult to get theaters we wanted or the numbers we wanted. We'd ask for 12 theaters in Atlanta, we'd get 6. In this industry landscape, a human interest story with no special effects or chart-topping soundtrack and headlined by a cast of young unknowns had an incredibly difficult time reaching audiences. And I can absolutely see that, but I would not have pegged this as a second film.
There was a TV movie in between the two, Bernice Bobs Her Hair, which is also something that she's gotten a lot of praise for. Technically, this would be her third if you count that one.
Okay. Yeah.
But still, I just like her storytelling style. And then the one that I always heard people talking about, probably my mom more than anything, was Crossing Delancey, which, that was a film that very much got a lot of buzz when it came out. And so that's, I just think that there's a line of storytelling style that Joan Micklin Silver had that, I don't know, I'm very compelled after watching this film to go and track down more of her projects.
Me too. Absolutely. I need to talk just a bit about Ray Berry as Herbert Fisk, conceptual artist. I love this scene so much. It might be my favorite scene in the entire film. It is at one point, Ray Berry shows up and he the first thing he does, he walks into the newsroom and he picks up the typewriter off of the receptionist's desk, Jill Eikenberry's desk, and smashes it on the ground and says that you've just experienced a conceptual art piece by Herbert Fisk, and hands a card and says, I would like to meet with a reporter. And then we get Peak Goldblum, who comes out and, in order to, I guess, ground this conceptual art piece of violence in reality, begins alternately tearing the newsroom lobby apart. and naming all of the conceptual art pieces, throwing paper, calling it paper in flight, kicking the coffee machine and calling it kicked coffee machine, punching the wall removed with fist and fingers. ripping the ad guy's the shirt open and calling it Stanley exposed. I was dying by the end of this scene. I was dying. I thought it was fantastic bit of humor, and I think it really shows just sort of the way she's able to use these kind of set pieces, I think, really artfully to keep the thing moving forward and keep the art and the humor moving forward, and boy, to use her players exactly right. I think this is what gives us Jeff Goldblum's kind of wackiness. I think he's just so great, and fun to see Ray Berry in this very, very bit part.
A very bit part, and it works well, with the reporter who pretty much kind of like, puts this faux artist in his place, right? Like, yeah. I felt like
we're not going to report on you.
Yeah, if Herbert Fisk really was somebody who had something, like, I felt like he would have been able to take it and would have been able to do something more that actually would have shown them, like, oh, okay, you know what? All right, we will talk to you. But like the way that it played, it was just perfect. It's like, I mean, sure, the office is destroyed, but Goldblum, like the way that he kind of ends that and just and Fisk walks out, I just like, that was just fantastic. So much fun.
It really, really was. I think this may be, it's tough because I've seen Jeff Goldblum, his first picture, credited picture was Death Wish. He was Freak number 1 in 1974.
Oh, he sure was. Yeah,
he sure was. He did California Split, 74, Nashville. Seen Nashville. He was Tricycle Man. Next Stop, Greenwich Village, St. Ives, Special Delivery, The Sentinel, and then Between the Lines in 77. So he
and Annie Hall also 77. Yeah.
Yep, Annie Hall in 77 too. So he'd done a bunch of stuff and some TV spots, Columbo and The Blue Knight. But I haven't seen The Sentinel or Special Delivery. Was this his biggest film role at the time? Is this like his first big film role? Have you seen any of those other movies?
I mean, Nashville, I mean, he was certainly a character in that one. It's an ensemble piece. I can't speak to any of those other ones. I haven't seen any of them, so I can't tell you where he landed in the film. But I feel like this was probably the area where things start getting bigger for him, because then you have shortly after this, like the very next year, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and he's definitely a bigger part there. Big Chill, like I have a feeling they're smaller. I'd have to go see them all, but that's my sense. But to that end, this was, for a number of people, their film debut, including Raymond J. Barry, who you were just talking about, also John Hurd and Joe Morton and Guy Boyd. So they all started here.
Great way to kick off a career. What a fun film.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else is hot on your list? Let me check my notes. Oh, Jeff, we got to see Jeff Goldblum teaching the girls about rock and roll and Blackbird. was another great one. Yeah. What is the connection between
hither, thither thing?
Yes.
That cracked me up.
What is the connection between all these things? Beat. The answer is that there's no connection, except that they're both about a blackbird. Like that is his big teaching moment. Is a troll. I thought was really great. So,
well, that was such a strange little scene, because I'm like, is he actually teaching something here? It's all women. Is he just putting something together because it's just to get the numbers of all these hot women? Like, what is he doing? His character is so funny.
Well, and that's what's so great about his character, is that he's a bozo. He's just such a bozo. And like, he's never, all of his conversations with the editor are like, just sort of, why you never get anything to me. You're like this great, rock and roll critic, and you're a complete deadbeat. Like, you're just all show. Like, what is it that you're actually bringing me in terms of something I can publish? And then he's also a teacher. And what is he, is he a guest teacher? Is this just a side gig? Like, he's just so alt that's why people, love him, that there's no substance, all style. And I think that's really great. And the fact that he's a bozo in the classroom too, like he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know he knows how he feels.
Well, it's interesting because, the film ends with him, he's in a different jacket. Like he loses his red jacket, which is like a defining kind of part of his character, just kind of that red jacket. And at the end, and I noted, I'm like, he's in a much nicer jacket. He's going to Oregon. Is this him growing up? Like, has he, because of the shifts and everything that's changed? I mean, we know he met those cute girls from Oregon. Perhaps that's why he's going. But he also looks more serious. But also, the film ends on that fantastic moment where he is talking to some guy in the bar. And basically, he has no money. And he, like, just the way that he cons this guy in the kindest way possible to end up buying him drinks based on his name and who he is. And when this guy finds out, like, oh, I've been reading you for years. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, let's have another drink, and it's like, it was just, I don't know. I felt like that was such a fantastic moment for the character. Like, I loved the way that he is just using all of that to get drinks.
Well, I have to talk about that guy because that guy is an interesting guy. His name is Douglas Kenney, and he was the co-founder of National Lampoon Magazine and the National Lampoon Radio Hour. Oh. And he is a pretty quiet guy, didn't have a lot going on, and particularly didn't have a lot going on because he fell off a cliff in Hawaii in 1980 and died. Oh. Horrible way to go, but an incredibly important guy in comedy writing in particular. And if you ever read the diaries of what's her name, Agnew, it was a column in National Lampoon Magazine that was so ridiculously funny that in terms of just his straight satire at the Harvard Lampoon, you can see just, why he ended up being who he was, and really sad that he didn't stick around much longer than that.
Wow.
So he was a producer on Caddyshack, and like he was Stork in Animal House. Yeah. After this, but not a whole lot.
Jeez.
You can find his, there are a lot of great clips if you search hard enough of the old National Lampoon magazine that you can find the PDFs of that have been scanned, and really neat to read some of his work. And it was a fun little cameo there.
Well, and speaking of writers, I mean, we should mention, Fred Barron and David Halpern, David Halpern Jr., who collaborated on this. This is something, I mean, Fred Barron had written for the Phoenix and the Real Paper and kind of some alt newspapers. Joan Micklin Silver had once worked for the Village Voice. And I think that it was based off of a little bit the Boston Phoenix. I don't know. I felt like they found a way into this world that worked really well. And so I liked that. I don't know. I guess when I learned that the writers and the director had experience in this world, it totally clicked for me because everything just felt so lived in.
Oh yeah, there was nothing in here that felt like it was foreign to the writers. I never got any other sense that it was anything but loved space. Like, these were people who had been there. It was the production design, the works. This was a world that I got. I think there is that hero moment where Bruno Kirby gets beaten up. There's the fight at the end of the alley. And that was the one piece that just sort of took me out of it, only because I never got beaten up as a behind the camera. And so it was just hard to relate to that. I know they're digging into hard things and asking hard questions of hard people, but that felt like the stretch to me. And I wasn't sure exactly what the purpose was of putting him in that sort of threatening situation. I don't know how it necessarily moved his story forward. Just putting him through some stuff, I don't know. I think there are other more realistic ways of getting that point across.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because the way that, Max so much was the guy who was kind of pushing him into these sorts of situations to kind of get him to grow and become a better reporter and stuff. So I was like, is this that moment where perhaps Max realizes that he pushed him a little too far with this particular person who is like a criminal, is what it seemed like. Like, is that kind of what happened, and realize, oh, you know what, he's too naive. He doesn't know how to read this sort of situation and realize that he's being conned right here.
Well, and how much of it is just straight up Max hazing him in some way, shape, or form, right? Like I think that might be a bit more of a dated conceit, is putting someone else's career in danger or life in danger because it was some sort of a haze. Maybe
part of it felt like, I don't know, and maybe I'm reading too much into kind of the Boston gang element, like kind of like the gangster world. But with this sort of paper and the alt news that they're pushing to get these sorts of stories, I guess I wouldn't have put it past them to be digging deep to the point where they potentially were getting threats and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. But do you agree that it felt discontinuous with the rest of the film? Like, it was such a short...
Oh, yeah.
It's a short beat.
No, I definitely agree.
It gives us... Yeah. What it gives us is a chase scene in the third act where we're running through the city, and I don't think the movie needed it.
I agree. I do feel there was something a little funky about that. But, this is coming out a year after... thinking in terms of Phoenix and where I live, but this is a year after Don Bowles was killed in Phoenix, who is a news reporter who was reporting on organized crime.
Yeah, well, dang it.
And so
you've got a case.
Yeah, I just feel like they're tapping into, because that was a big story, and it still is a little bit of a mystery as far as like, who killed him and all that. At least here in Arizona, people still talk about it. So I just feel like it probably was in the zeitgeist that this sort of thing, reporters who do put themselves out there to do this investigative journalism are potentially putting themselves at risk.
All right. That's fair. And I think anything else we need to cover?
The only other note that I had was Michael Kamen. Hey, look at that. Michael Kamen.
I know.
Early composing job for him. I loved seeing his name pop up for him. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think he did the full score. I think he was one of two composers, him and Steve Van Zandt.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Great movie.
Great movie. I'm going to watch it again.
Well, we will be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by Van Stee, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and the numbers at d-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. All right, Andy, did it do anything at awards season?
Little bit. I had 4 wins and 1 other nomination. At the Berlin International Film Festival, Joan Micklin Silver won the Interfilm Award. I don't know, it was called the Interfilm Award and called the Otto Dibelius Film Award. So she won that one. She also won the reader jury of the Berlin Morgenpost Award, whatever those are.
Oh.
The film was nominated for the Golden Berlin Bear, but it lost to the film The Ascent. Also won at the Boston Society of Film Critics Awards. In 2019, this is a very recent award. It was a special award for Best Rediscoveries. And the LA Film Critics Association Awards gave Joan Micklin Silver the New Generation Award. So a lot of awards very specifically for her and what she was up to.
And at the box office, I gather you just decided not to look for numbers this week. I mean, that based on the evidence, that's all I can conclude, right?
It's very difficult to find anything for this film. It's very frustrating. Yeah, Joan Micklin Silver, this film, it was just a mystery. There was no budget information, no box office take information. What I could find is the film released April 27th, 1977, opposite Francois Truffaut's The Man Who Loved Women, and a month before Star Wars. But that is all that I got.
Okay.
I know.
Okay, I guess that's all we'll do.
That's all we're going to do. Yeah.
Well, I'm really thrilled to end our series on this movie because I think it is, it's great, it's fun, it's funny, it's a fantastic ensemble film, and I loved being introduced to Micklin Silver's work this way. We should probably do our ratings.
And we're ending this series, but as I said, we're kicking off our next series, looking at John Hurd and some of his films. So it'll be a fun one. But we will be right back for those ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, Chilly Scenes of Winter.
What do you want?
What do I want? I want to marry Laura. That's what I want. I thought everybody knew that.
Charles loves Laura. Laura likes Charles.
I want to sleep with you.
Wait a minute.
Charles would marry Laura tomorrow.
Wait a minute.
But Laura's already married to a guy called Ox. Joan Micklin Silver's Chilly Scenes of Winter.
Now I'm no longer alone.
A comedy about people trying to connect in a disconnected world.
I don't think you're that great. As a matter of fact, there's quite a few things about you that I don't like.
Yeah? Name one.
It's different. It's offbeat. And it's always on target.
You heard me. I love your wife.
You show very good taste.
It's about temptation,
The Lord have mercy on your soul.
Thank you.
contemplation, adoration, and accusation.
Are you seeing someone else?
What?
It's about deviation
Hi, Mom.
and desperation.
Don't worry. I'm not going to beg her. Janet, how can I get it as she won't come out of her apron?
And most of all,
Night, Ox.
the outrageous complications
Night, Laura.
of Charles' never-ending
Night, Charles.
infatuation.
Night, Sam.
John Hurd and Mary Beth Hurt in Chilly Scenes of Winter.
All right, Andy. So with all of our glowing discussion here, how are you gonna rate it over at Letterboxd?
This is one of those films. It's like I just fell into this world and just loved being there. I feel like 4 stars and a heart is where I'm going to sit.
That's exactly where I was going to be. I thought there is a chance if you go higher than 4 stars, you might influence me higher than 4 stars. But I am at 4 stars and a heart. And it's just it was a real feel good walk through the history of alt media. It was great and a great introduction. So 4 stars and a heart.
Awesome. So what did you think about Between the Lines? We want to know. Hop into the Show Talk channel in our Discord community where we are going to be talking about this movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Yes, Letterboxd doeth. And I went low.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I went very low. I just decided I would see what's going on at the bottom of the barrel. And
yeah,
it's not great. It's not great.
Oh, my.
Would you like to go first? You want me to start and maybe we climb up to yours?
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Let's climb up.
I have a 1 star from Fistrionics, who says, "Where to start? A menagerie of contemptible, self-indulgent blowhards backstabbing each other and jerking themselves off, only to have the inevitable come down and call the party off. Top with a thick layer of self-satisfaction, smarm, and cutesy flair, embarrassingly trying to pass itself off as radical or meaningful. If the boomers are going to lick their wounds this dramatically, could they at minimum provide their position with the least amount of sympathy? Trash people abound in the thinnest of possible plot threads, lost forevermore between the lines of good taste."
Even working the title into the review. So funny.
Yes. Outstanding. Bile. Poison.
I liked how you took on a character as you like.
Yeah, there's a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going to go, that character,
There's
but
a little
I can guarantee you he'll be
something.
back. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a 4-star by Christian Ryan, and I can't help but feel like you wrote this under the alias Christian Ryan. This is the review. I want to live in this movie. I'll take the corner desk over by Bruno Kirby, pay for Jeff Goldblum's drinks, and sleep on John Hurd's couch. Michael J. Pollard, Joe Morton, and I will bum around the strip clubs on the nights Mary Lou Henner is dancing, and I'll talk Gwen Wells out of moving to New York with that schmuck. From now on, every penny I throw into a fountain, every wishbone I break, and every birthday candle I blow out, this will be the wish that I make.
Okay. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. You nailed it. Thanks, Letterboxd. Andy, it's hard to believe we've been having weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals has links to purchase the source material behind our adapted film discussions. Your purchases there help support the show at no extra cost.
For the entirety of season 11, we featured films directed by women.
The only exceptions were some of our member bonus episodes.
We talked about The Lure for our horror debuts series, which is a very loose adaptation of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen.
Definitely miles from the Disney versions.
For our 10-year anniversary series, we covered We Need to Talk About Kevin, taken from the Lionel Shriver novel.
Man, that was brilliant.
And horrifying.
Yeah. The Journalist series included Merrily We Go to Hell and The Weight of Water, adapted from Anita Shreve's bestseller.
We filled some gaps in previous series with member bonus episodes on adaptations like Malcolm X, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, Cactus Flower, Wild at Heart, Life Force, and The Blues Brothers.
Our John Hurd series looked at a trio of adaptations: Chilly Scenes of Winter from the novel by Ann Beatty, Awakenings based on Oliver Sacks' nonfiction book, and Rambling Rose adapted from the Calder Willingham novel.
2 films in our coming-of-age debut series were adapted from books: The Virgin Suicides from Jeffrey Eugenides and The Diary of a Teenage Girl, Phoebe Glockner's graphic novel.
We had Queen of Kotway for our sports series based on Tim Crothers' nonfiction book.
And Clueless kicked off our 90s comedy series, loosely adapted from Jane Austen's Emma.
It totally took place in the 90s, though. Find all of these books and more adaptations on our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today.